Life is weirdly a lot harder than we've been told. And midlife? That's a whole other can of worms that I was completely unprepared for. What about you? But here's the good news. There are so many new skills and mindsets that we can learn to make even the toughest days a little bit better. You just haven't learned them. Welcome to Thrive with Kira, a smart and sweary podcast for women in midlife that teaches the skills to get more joy and love in your life. Join me weekly as I teach science-based, smarty-farty topics and break them down into bite-sized lessons that you can apply to your life, all while sharing my own shit show life stories that you can learn from. I'll be talking regularly about getting more joy on a daily basis, thriving in midlife, yes, you can, figuring out menopause, healthy dating and relationships, building self-worth, body positivity and neutrality, growth mindset, adult friendships, and also just easy mindfulness. So we can stop just surviving and start learning how to thrive. Welcome to Thrive. Welcome, guys. Welcome to Thrive. I'm Kira, the force of nature behind this podcast. I hope you guys noticed that all of the episodes are there now. So there's over 380 episodes. I have a great topic today, but before I jump into it, and I'm actually going to do it in a fancy way, like a very This American Life kind of way, I want to make a couple quick announcements and definitely listen to these because they are amazing. So first of all, I'm having a summer fire sale. I usually do this once a summer, and it is as a way to give back to my listeners and my former clients and everything, and do something on a discount so that if somebody wants to get some support or help, they can. And this year I am doing some one-on-one sessions with me. So you can get either 30-minute or 60-minute sessions with me. 30 minutes are $99 and 60-minute are $199. Those are half off. If you are struggling with a situation at work, with a situation with a family member, with a friend, in a dating situation that you're unsure about, a relationship, I think we know that I have got the chops after 16 years to help you with that. And this is a great way if you have a situation come up and you're like, fuck, I don't know what to do. And we may talk to our friends and we may talk to our family members and we're like, this doesn't feel healthy. Man, I got you. And I'm actually making them 3 days a week through the rest of the year. So if you have a situation come up within probably 48 hours, you and I can get on the phone and you will feel clearer. You will know what to do. You will have tools and resources to help you through it. And you will just walk away lighter, more comfortable, and just knowing what you want to do. And man, that's worth $1 million fucking dollars for me, especially the younger version of me who would wear every one of my friends out or whoever would listen about my situations, just hoping that somebody would help. You can grab a couple of them. You can buy it for a friend if you think that they're going through something, use some clarity. You can find out everything at sessions.thrivewithkira.com. That'll get you in there. You can buy some 30-minute sessions or 60-minute sessions and use them throughout the rest of the year. They are not available for 2025 because, as I have pointed out, the only work I'm doing in 2025 is Thrive. So when you actually join the Thrive program, you have access to me every day for 9 months. My focus is on you, is on this group, is on this community, is on this program. That's it. That's a big ass deal. I don't know if I've ever been in part of a program where me and my stuff and what I'm struggling with and what I'm working on is the absolute focus for that coach for 9 whole months. Throwing it out there. So sessions at 50% off. More information about the Thrive program. It's all at the new site, thrivewithkira.com. Please go look at it because I did it myself and I think it's beautiful and I'm really super proud of it. And it makes me happy when people are like, oh, that looks really nice. So, whoomp, there it is, everybody. So I mentioned earlier that today is actually one of my favorite topics of all time. And in fact, I have never swayed on having this be a part of my program, I think almost the whole entire time that I've coached. And in fact, this is something that really changed my perspective in a huge way, and in some ways really kicked off some of this journey. So today, like I said, I'm going to do a little bit of a This American Life, which usually means that they have this kind of overall theme and then maybe multiple different stories about the theme. So, the first part of this, I want to talk about this quote that changed my life. I want to read it to you. I actually have a PDF you can download of it if you like it and want to also remind yourself of it regularly. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. The second thing, I'm going to tell you a story. I'm going to tell you a Kira story about love versus fear and how for years and years and years, I declared that my actions were from love and they were from fear. And I hate to tell you guys, but there's a very good chance that yours are too. And then finally, I want to tell you guys about how fear shows up in our life in ways that we don't even recognize. And in fact, we may think that we are living the most kind way that we know how. And it turns out that even though our actions are sometimes kind, the intention isn't out of love, but it's actually out of fear. And I'm going to talk about that. Isn't this sound fancy today, guys? Probably not, but just give it to me. I need this. So, the first things that I want to be clear about is that when I talk about love, I am not talking about romantic love. I think a lot of times when we talk about love in our culture or society, we make an assumption that it means love between two people who are in a partnership, who are romantic. That is not what I'm talking about. I am talking about love for ourselves, love for others, love that shows up as compassion and empathy, love for our world, love for our earth, like all the things, right? In moving through life, making choices out of love for ourselves, love for others, love for our world. So that's the first thing I want to clarify, is that I am not talking about romantic love. And we get really, really stuck, especially my single ladies, get really stuck in that headspace of love is for other people in partnerships. There is love everywhere, all day, every day, in lots of situations. So I'm talking about this general idea of love in moving through the world in a loving way from a loving place. That's the first thing I want to say. So you can move through this world in a loving way, make decisions from love versus fear, whether you are in a relationship, whether you are dating, whether you have any intention of any kind of romantic relationship. So that's point one. Next, I want to read you this quote. This quote that means a lot to me. Now, I'll tell you right away, it is from a book called Conversations with God. Now, please don't be turned off from that. I tend to lean into spirituality at this point. I am not really into organized religion. I grew up as a Methodist. I'm having a very hard time aligning with Christianity in America right now. But this is really something for everybody, whatever religion it is. But I did want to tell you guys where I got it from. This is not something I made up. It is way too beautiful and smart and concise to be something that I made up. But hey, I'm working on it, right? Yet. That's the growth mindset there. So this is by Neil Donald Walsh. And from the book Conversations with God, I have not read it since. I read this in like the late 90s, early 2000s. I don't even remember when it came out, but it blew my mind. So here we go. Every action taken by human beings is based in love or fear, not simply those dealing with relationships. Decisions affecting business, industry, politics, religion, the education of our young, the social agenda of our nations, the economic goals of our society, choices involving war, peace, attack, defense, aggression, submission, determinations to covet or give away, or to save or to share, to unite or to divide. Every single free choice you ever undertake arrives out of one of the only two possible thoughts there are: a thought of love or a thought of fear. Fear is the energy which contracts, closes down, draws in, runs, hides, hoards, harms. Love is the energy which expands, opens up, sends out, stays, reveals, shares, heals. Fear wraps our body in clothes. Love allows us to stand naked. Fear clings to and clutches all that we have. Love gives all that we have away. Fear holds close. Love holds dear. Fear grasps. Love lets go. Fear wrangles. Love soothes. Fear attacks. Love amends. Every human thought, word, or deed is based in one emotion or the other. You have no choice about this because there is nothing else from which to choose. But you have free choice about which of these to select. Damn, when I read that, and let me tell you, I have read this quote thousands of times to people, to myself, and it just brings some clarity to me that so many things that we think we are doing out of love, for others, at work, is not actually from a loving place. And I'm going to say it like that because I think that that makes a little bit more sense. And even though we think it is, we may be like, I made cupcakes for work. That's from a loving place. Okay. First of all, I love cupcakes. Please feel free to send me cupcakes. Next, so I think our knee-jerk response is if we are to look at somebody who is doing something that we maybe automatically assume is nice or kind, such as bringing cupcakes. That can also show up on a date when somebody kind of showers you with attention or gifts. What computes in our mind is love. This person clearly loves me or likes me or cares about me, right? But where this gets really fucking good, really fucking interesting, and really fucking helpful is when we look at the intention behind the action. So, back to the cupcakes that you brought to work. Why did you do it? What's the intention? Did you do it because you've just had such a great team lately and you guys have been working together and you just love these people so much and you're like, I just wanted to make cupcakes and celebrate this with you because I'm so proud of us? Or are we bringing cupcakes to win some people over because you think maybe they don't like you? Are you bringing cupcakes because you want your boss to notice you for that promotion? Are you bringing cupcakes because you want people to think well of you? All of these are fear. Now, notice the first one was, things are so good. I feel so lit up. I feel so happy in this situation that I'm doing this to celebrate. I'm doing this because it feels so good to give back in a way that feels good to me to give back. Versus, if I don't do this, people will be pissed off at me. I better do this to make people like me. I better do this to get attention. I better do this so that people think I'm nice. Now, do you hear the difference in the spaces those places are coming from? The intention of where it's coming from. And I think that all of us would go, somebody bringing homemade cupcakes to work is a kind and loving thing to do. I think that's immediately what everybody would say. What, that person, for no reason whatsoever, just made homemade fucking cupcakes and brought it to work for all of us? That is so awesome. However, you and I know that there's a lot of things we do all day, every day that aren't from that, oh yes, I just want to celebrate with these people, or I love these people so much, or I'm so proud of us space. And in fact, many things we do are not from a space of being so happy that we want to give, feeling so filled up that our cup is running over, and what runs over, we can help with others. Most of the time, we're doing it from a place of burnout, from a place of anger or bitterness, from a place of fear where if we don't, maybe they won't like us. Now, let's add that to friendships and relationships. I talk to nice people all the time. I live in the Midwest, which, if you guys have ever heard, is Midwestern nice. It's not always Midwestern kind. And there's the difference. We do a lot of things to seem nice, look nice, maybe even feel nice. But the minute that somebody doesn't respond the way we want them to, we don't like it. The minute somebody doesn't do it back in a similar way, not good. A lot of times, what we are doing and making decisions from and making choices from and choosing actions or to do something from is fear. Is about getting people to like us, is about not pissing people off. It's about winning people over rather than building authentic connection with vulnerability and trust. And to tie this in a little bit to relationships and dating, which is still a lot of what this podcast is about, because every single person, whether you're having a romantic relationship or not, unless you're never talking to another human, you are having relationships, period. But tying it back into relationships and dating, one of the things that can be very confusing is who here has been, once again, maybe showered with attention or gifts. They're texting all day, every day. They're telling you how much they like you. They are paying for your meals or taking you to cool places. And then, once again, that computes as, oh my God, this person likes me. This person is soloing me out because they like me, they want to love me, they want to create a relationship with me. But we don't see the intention is actually from the fear space. This person is so scared of not having love or relationship that they will do whatever it takes to get you to like them. They will say what they need to say. They will do what they need to do. They will act how they need to act for you to respond in the way that they want response. Problem with that, many problems with that, is number one, that's not even about you. That's all about them and how they're feeling and the needs that they have that, by the way, you are never going to actually be able to create for them because that's their own work. Now, what also happens is they put you on such a pedestal that when you become human, which you are, in case nobody told you today, they become resentful. They're disappointed. They can be rude. They can be angry. They can be abusive. That's why love bombing isn't love. Because love is an emotion created by healthy relationships that take time, vulnerability, accountability, trust. And you can be attracted to somebody. You can be highly attracted to somebody. You can see excitement and possible future, but also be aware that you don't fucking know this person and they don't fucking know you. When somebody tells you that they love you and they're attached to you after a couple days or a couple of weeks, let's be honest, make that make sense. Really, there's this part, this magical rom-com part of us that's, yes, they're gonna know, I'm gonna know, we're gonna know, let's do this. You won't know shit except that you're attracted to them and you wanna hump them, or you enjoy talking to them, or they make you feel good in their presence. These are all great things, but they don't guarantee love and they don't guarantee a healthy relationship. And when somebody is expressing emotions, is showering you with things that when they don't even know you, we should be sus. We should be going, huh, maybe this doesn't add up. And if we ask them to slow down and they can't, then we have the answer we need. And that's why love bombing doesn't work. is because love bombing is from fear. And fear doesn't create love. Fear creates just a different kind of fear. That kind of explains a concept that I've been talking about for years, which is whatever starts in fear is a hard time ending up in love. You can do it, but there's probably going to be some big old therapy. It's going to be a lot of awkward and tough conversations. There's going to be a lot of hurt feelings, a lot of disappointment, a lot of frustration because you held on to the chemical cocktail and woke up going, fuck, we don't even know each other. I don't even know if I like this person. Happens all the time. Now, the next thing I want to point out is this idea that most of our emotions really break down into these two ideas. And although that's a very heady concept, I believe it to be true. That if we look at virtually any emotion that we're experiencing, it can go one way or the other. So emotions like joy, happiness, belonging, acceptance, compassion, these are all derivatives or from love. Now, simultaneously, we have emotions like guilt, shame, anger, depression, anxiety, jealousy, and they are derivatives of fear. Are you getting and picking up what I'm throwing down, everybody? Let's move into part 2 of this, which I'm going to tell you a story because I like to share stories on here because I'm hoping that you can learn from my mistakes. Now, occasionally I tell Kira stories, and these are stories of things that have happened to me or things that I have done. And most of them are things that I am not proud of. And so I share how I was an asshole for your learning. You're welcome. Because I wasn't always as knowledgeable about love and dating and relationships. I had not gone through life coach training. I had not begun the epiphany that is my life. That's a push. That's a real push. But 20-something Kira made all the same mistakes, if not more, than I feel like a lot of people have made. Same with 30-something Kira, honestly, if I'm being honest, which I am. So let's reading rainbow this shit up and gather round while I tell you a story about choices. Personal choices that I was making out of fear, but yet declaring to the world were love. So let's start by going back to simpler times called the 90s. I was in my 20s. I was footloose and fancy fucking free, dating and mating and trying to connect with people, although I had zero idea how to do so. These were the times before really online dating was a thing. And I was meeting people the old fashioned way at bars. Remember when we all used to do that? To me, that's what we did in the 90s and somewhat 2000s of going out, getting drunk, hooking up, and maybe it goes somewhere. If you were actively normally dating, good for you. I was not. I had no idea how to get a date. I knew how to maybe get some attention. But as I've talked about on this podcast before and will continue to talk about, I definitely had a type. Definitely. And although they could look different, here were the similarities in no particular order. Number 1, very, very bright. I used to love my conversations drenched in witty banter. And as we would get talking, there'd be this almost hum and challenge in between us of who was going to say the slightly smarter or funnier thing. Next, they were super bright, but they're also underachievers, which was my jam because then I could show them how I could help them, show them how I could save them and rescue them from themselves. Next, they're probably a musician. That's my go-to. Could not care less about athletes or actors. Give me a musician. They probably liked the drink a little too much, which is interesting for me because I actually did not grow up around alcohol. My parents really didn't drink. They would maybe be the people who had a rum and coke at a holiday party once a year. So the fact that I found myself in bars in the middle of the day, surrounded by other people who are there in the middle of the day, I'm not judging that whatsoever. But the type of people that I was meeting, as well as the type of places that I was going, these were not people who were thriving in life. Finally, if they had an accent, starting probably on top with Scottish, then to Irish, poor Welsh, they get kicked to the side. But if there just happened to be an accent, that sealed the deal. And I wish there was footage of me having a drink, talking with a friend, and perking up as soon as I heard an accent and being like, oh, where's that coming from? Who's that? But finally, they're always a little bit of a tortured soul, right? They didn't like their life. They'd been dealt a bad hand in life. They never got the respect that they deserve. And if honest with myself, I was not consciously choosing those people. But at the end of the day, when I look back, they were all very similar because I saw my place. Here's the motherfucking truth. The truth is, I didn't think that myself as is was worthy enough of love. Whether it was about my weight, whether it was about my level of experience, whether it was about my own kind of failing and flailing through life. If you would have asked me if I liked myself, I would have said, of course. Unconsciously, I was choosing to put myself in mediocre to bad situation after bad situation. And then the super fucked up part is when these didn't work out, I would just beat myself up about it for sometimes days, weeks, or months. Never really being honest with myself that the people that I was choosing, the people that I was gravitating towards, were not people who are ready for relationship. It's that fucking simple. I'm so glad that we do not use the "it's complicated" thing on Facebook anymore, because really when it comes down to it, it's not that complicated. There's either two people who like each other and are willing to do the hard shit to move forward and see if there's a relationship there, or there's not. And for as much as I chose somebody who liked my attention because I doted on them, and they liked how I made them feel like they are worthy. But the thing is we both didn't like ourselves. So whether it was a day, whether it was a week, or whether it was a month, it would always end up in the same place. Me beating myself up, feeling like shit, wondering why everybody else can get love except for me. But just somewhere in this process of educating myself, coaching other people, learning a shit ton about love and dating and relationships, I realized I was the one who was creating this pattern. I was the one who was choosing people who weren't ready and then beating myself up or blaming myself when it didn't work out. I was trying to get people to love me who did not even like themselves. I was trying to have a relationship of some kind with somebody who could not show up for a relationship. We are self-fulfilling prophecies, my friends. I promise you we are. And if you would have told 28-year-old me that why she wasn't getting love or the relationship she wanted was because of the people I was choosing, of the way I was bending over backwards and sacrificing myself, my worth, my magic vajayjay to be in these half-ass, mostly drunk hookups, I would have thought you were crazy. I would have fought so fucking hard and justified so fucking hard these people, my choices, and just that's how love supposedly worked. I was sold on the chemistry. I was sold on this intense short-term connection. I was sold on the highest highs and the lowest lows that I was bouncing between, depending on the time, energy, and attention somebody else was fucking giving me that day. I didn't actually want love. I wanted somebody to tell me that I was pretty and that I was likable. I wanted somebody to need me so desperately that they would never leave or abandon me, like I feel that it had happened in my childhood. And I thought that if I could get one of these poor guys who were fucking struggling to need me enough that we could just make it last forever. And I didn't even think about happiness, and I didn't even think about healthy relationships. That shit wasn't even on my fucking radar. I just wanted somebody to choose me, make me feel attractive because I didn't, like me because I didn't like my fucking self, and need me so desperately that they would never leave. And all of those actions, decisions, choices were from fear. I now know that you have to choose somebody who wants to be there and work on the relationship too. You have to choose somebody who is in at least a decent enough place to meet you halfway. None of us need to be perfect, but you got to have your shit together enough that you're not going to sabotage it every 2 seconds. For a long time after the realization of how I allowed and tolerated a lot of bullshit, for a few years, I beat myself up. I looked back at the choices I made. I looked back and I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed at who I allowed myself to become. I was embarrassed about what person I pretzeled myself into so that some boy would like me. But as my growth continues, I'm not embarrassed anymore. I have compassion for this younger version of myself. I have compassion and empathy for the little girl who was an adult just wanting some love that she never had gotten. I have compassion that I was acting from a place of fear and a scarcity and abandonment, and that I just didn't fucking know better. I was trying to get love and attention in whatever way I could or worked for me when I was a kid, but it wasn't working for me anymore. So much of why dating and relationships and love are not working right now is because we are trying to put a square peg in a round hole. We are trying to connect to people that feel comfortable to us, but are not able to show up for us. It's so interesting when I talk to somebody who's talking about a new person they're dating or someone they've dated for a while, and I see them start to justify their behavior, to make excuses. But my own self-compassion has it allowed a compassion for my clients and for all singles who are out there who are trying to connect, who are trying to have love, and are making really piss poor choices to get it. And not because they're bad or broken, because they just haven't done the work to understand how they work and to understand how to get and be in a healthy fucking relationship. Please learn from my mistakes. Please don't put yourself through years of hell and rejection and pain and hurt and just anger at myself and sadness, supposedly all in the name of love, but was really in the name of fear. Now, I mentioned that today was going to be 3 parts. The first part was talking about really the concept and that quote of what love is versus fear. The second is my story about all the things that I declared were love, but were fear. And the final thing I want to talk about is other ways that fear shows up in our life that we don't necessarily know, that we don't necessarily see, that we can work on, that we can change, and that can make a huge impact in our happiness and joy in life. Now, I loved this concept, and I will make sure that I put it in the notes of where I got it from. But there was a woman, she's a coach, and she shared that fear breaks down in 4 places. And I'd like to talk about what those are. So she points out that anxiety is fear of the future. Now, I've heard that for years, right? Anxiety is looking at the future, depression is from looking at the past, and that ultimately where we can feel the most joy is when we're in the present. And in fact, Rob Mack and I talked about that just a couple weeks ago. So here's what she has to say about anxiety is the fear of the future. So she says this fear is like a natural alarm that alerts us of potential danger. But the ego, I would probably say pride is the word that I would use, which controls the system, can also trigger false alarms. So what does that mean? That means that our brains, the way that they work, they are constantly looking for fear and scary situations to keep us safe and protect us. So although our brains work like that, so that our ancestors would know to be properly scared and frightened when maybe they were being hunted by a saber-toothed tiger, our brains now in our current world are still triggering these fears or these potential fears like we're in the room with a saber-toothed tiger, but we're not. Maybe it's an email that sucked. Maybe we're online and we see something that kind of triggers a past moment that happened to us or experience. And these false alarms feel real to us and cause us to react as though they were life-threatening. And we need to understand that most of us in our daily lives don't experience deadly situations for which pride is trying to protect us from. Right now, I'm not saying that we aren't on the road and we have to be careful and safe when we're driving or whatever we're doing. But most of us, and I'm not saying everybody, but most of us do not live in life or death situations on a daily basis. We just don't. So anxiety is our fear of the future. And I liked this quote from Khalil Gibran, who is also was there in my opening of the 90s when I started to get into this kind of work, when I started to be interested in just bigger thoughts and more outside perspective than maybe I had learned at the time. But he says our anxiety does not come from thinking about the future, but from wanting to control it. And I'm like, fuck, yeah, that's a thing. That's absolutely a thing. And in fact, I shared a quote this week on my Instagram, which aren't you guys following me? I'm putting good shit there. And the quote said, my therapist said the reason why you self sabotage is because it allows you to predict what is going to happen, which is giving you the illusion of self control. Boom! Mic drop. People did not like that. They did not like that because my ladies were like, oh, I see it and feel that. We are all trying to control our future. We are all trying to control every second of our daily life so we can feel safe because we're scared because of fear. Fear that of things that have happened to us in the past or fear of things that haven't happened yet. That's what anxiety is. But as we know, We can control our thinking. We can control our emotions. We can control how we respond to a situation. We can control what choices we make. But the majority of life is completely out of our control. And the people I see who sometimes struggle the most are the people who don't grasp the idea that they cannot control life. They can control parts of their life, their experience, their role in the relationships. But when we're scared all the time, we're trying to control it all. We're trying to control other people. We're trying to control our partners. We're trying to control everybody so we don't have to feel unsafe. Because when we're unsafe, we shut down, we lash out, we get angry, we get hurt, we push people away who we love. It's a real fucking thing. But what if we stopped trying to control all the things that we can't control and we focused on what we can? We focused on how we respond. We focus on what actually creates your self-fulfilling prophecy. Now, that's not some Aladdin Disney shit. That's actually psychology broken down to the beliefs that we have create our words, and our words create our actions, and our actions create our choices, and our choices then create our future. So what you believe, what you think about yourself, what you think about the world, you're continuing to create that again and again and again, unless we have a disrupt to the system, unless we hijack our system, take it back, and actively try to work with it. Now, these are the actions, the intentional activities that I was talking about last week with the happiness set point. Us not just flowing along, not loving our lives, not loving ourselves, being stuck, but actually stopping, pausing, reflecting, and doing something different. That's the only way this changes. That's the only way. Otherwise, the only way is like something so terrible in your life happens, so shitty that you are forced to look from a different perspective. You are forced to create a different opinion. But we don't have to or want to get to that point of rock bottom devastation. It's being so stuck we hate our lives, being so lonely that we think this is it, this is all we got. We don't want to be in that place to change. We can look at where we are right now and go, this isn't enough. I want more than this. And bringing this back to midlife, I really feel that particularly Gen X and probably elder millennials, but I bet even younger millennials feel this way. I think we just were taught this is our lot in life. If you're not happy, suck it up and push through. If you're not happy, then numb out and just keep getting to work and getting that check so you can buy shit you don't want or need. We have to actively acknowledge that what we're doing isn't working for us anymore. Next in this article I found, she said, anger is fear of dismissal. I'm going to explain that for a second because originally when I read that, I was like, what does that mean? And she explains it really well. But so anxiety is the fear of the future. I think we can all say that. And then anger is the fear of dismissal. And what she says is this fear can be seen in strong, self-assured people who are fearful that something could be taken away from them, whether it's their liberty, it's an idea, or uncertainty. Anger is not usually associated as a type of fear. It is part of us that causes us to fight. And I think that's true. I think we almost think the anger is, I think sometimes we can almost confuse it with confidence. We almost confuse it with power. But anger is just sadness expressed in a different way. Melancholy and loneliness expressed in a different way. Nobody who is shouting at people is happy and loving and having a wonderful life. Not that we all don't have moments or tough situations that come up, but just the same, I think we do confuse anger with something not positive, but powerful. And it's not. It's honestly about the lowest level of fear. You are hurting so much inside that anybody getting too close that could hurt them, anybody who doesn't stick to the plan that they created in their head and maybe didn't share with anybody else, not doing exactly what they were hoping, because then they'll feel unsafe. They lash out at, they push away, they yell at. They are so scared. And when you see somebody who is angry, you can picture inside of them that child who's unhealed and doesn't know how to do anything differently. This is how their trauma has shown up. And once again, we may have a moment that really brings anger in us, and maybe rightfully so. In perimenopause, I'm angry a lot. I got rage inside of me right now that I was not expecting. There's so many things that I thought I healed or I'd worked on enough that this hormone chemical cocktail in my brain is not doing so well. Luckily, though, if I get ragey, if I get angry, I also have the tools to talk myself back down and correct the situation. We get to be angry. And in fact, I want to say to women that I think we get to be angry more because a lot of shitty things happen to us. But if that's our go to, if that's the place that shows up when you're scared, and by the way, are we noticing some of this is tying up to fight, flight, freeze, or fawn? So this would be the fight. But if every time that we get scared, we lash out, we push away, that's not going to create a life or relationships that we want. It's just not. So she goes on to say, anger is fear turned inward. We are afraid of what is inside of us. We are fearful of our own feelings. We are scared to be afraid. Anger is the release of all of these fears, and it allows us a false sense of control. Hear that again? Over how we are really feeling, because anger is the loss of control. The loss of control means that the pride is leading the charge and plans some sort of action. And here's the deal, maybe we're really proud that we can lash out at somebody, that we can cut people down to size, that we can say, "Uh-oh, you slightly hurt me, although I didn't tell you. I didn't give you this boundary." Then it becomes unhelpful. Then it's ineffective. Anger is an emotion you get to have, but if it's the emotion that you always have, if it's the emotion that you regularly channel, it's not creating the life that you want. And it's certainly not going to help create relationships that create love and joy. You're probably not going to keep jobs that light you up. You're not going to have friendships that are deep because you're so fucking scared. Anybody who gets in too close and maybe pushes that possible fake sense of control just makes us freak out. And there's a quote, she put a quote for each section, and it says, anger is an acid that can do more harm to the vessel in which it is stored than anything on which it is poured. That's Mark Twain. So he was writing this shit in the 1800s. This isn't new shit. We just don't listen. Next, depression is the fear of the past. And she puts this a really interesting way that is not the way I would say it, but I think it's interesting and worth reading. Past behavior is a good indication for future behavior. It's a statement that can be used to help us determine expectations. We're going to assume that the way that somebody responded in a past situation is probably the way they're going to respond in a future situation. So, not all just past and history and everything else, but we are taking our knowledge from what we know and what we've learned and what we've experienced, and we're assuming that that person, that experience, that situation are going to be the same. That's part of the way our brain helps us make us feel safe. But as a reminder, as I have to remind myself regularly, we can grow and so do others. Therefore, the past shouldn't dictate the future, but our fears allow it to do so. She goes on to say depression causes us to stay in the past. It sounds pointless to be afraid of the past, but the pride keeps us living there and we are unable to move forward. This fear keeps us from enjoying the present moment. But when we actually examine our lives, we can see that through learning and becoming aware, we have proven that our fears are unfounded. We have all seen others react differently to the exact same incident, which is proof that future behavior can be different than past behavior. We are all unique, and therefore, how we react to any given situation will be unique. Therefore, our fear is unfounded and should be let go. We need to stop expecting the worst to happen. Each day, we are given a new chance to make things better and not repeat the woes of yesterday. And then she says right here exactly what I was saying, which is don't live a life of self fulfilling prophecy of negativity. You can choose to see it differently. We can rewrite the story we tell ourselves. And this is the way trauma bites our ass. Now, not all trauma is the same. I think a lot of people have trauma and do not realize they have trauma because they think trauma is going to war. They think trauma is extreme abuse. They think trauma is maybe sexual assault. But trauma can be anything that happened to us that we are still holding on to and is helping us or not helping us make future decisions because we are thinking, because of that moment, that other moments are going to be just like this. So if you had a relationship where they did something you didn't like, there's a part of us that brings that along to our new relationship and maybe makes us eagle-eyed on their behavior, overly worrisome, maybe not talk, maybe not speak up, not ask questions. And that's what trauma is. We are bringing something from our past to our present, and it is creating our future. Am I making sense when I say that? I hope so. Please go back and listen to that again if not, because it is a kind of bigger concept that I don't think we really understand. So if you've had a bad experience that is something similar happens, you instantly go, uh-oh, that bad thing is going to happen again. So I'm going to get out or fight or flight or freeze or fawn or whatever. That's trauma, which creates fear. That's also what we call baggage that we're bringing to our new relationships. It's a very kind word for trauma on some level. Doesn't feel good when somebody says, "What's your baggage?" But at the end of the day, when we don't heal, when we don't come into almost every relationship with a clean slate, we are bringing our past shit there. And unless we heal a little bit, unless we talk it out, unless we acknowledge our role, that keeps happening. And I just want to say this as kindly as I can. That can rarely be done by yourself. This is why we have helpers. This is why we have therapists. This is why we have coaches. This is why we have breath work. This is why we have Reiki. This is why we have so many incredible tools now to help us process these emotions, the trauma, whether it's in your body physically, mentally, emotionally. And if you're miserable, if you're sad, if you're lonely, if you're struggling, or even if you're just numb and you're numbing through life and you're just pushing through and each day is the same, that doesn't have to be your existence. There are resources, people who can help. And we just have to get over our Gen X don't want to ask for help. We don't need help. We're good. Everything's great. I can handle this myself. Bullshit. And start living a life that feels good. Finally, the last fear she talks about is doubt, is being afraid of making a decision. I think we all know that feeling, right? So many of us are afraid of making the wrong decision that we just won't make any decision at all. Or we make choices that we know what's going to happen. So we think that we are actually in control. And those decisions usually are choosing not great partners, choosing things that don't work for us, because then we know the answer. And somehow that feels better in our brain to do the same thing over and over, even if it's shitty because we know the outcome, rather than try something new, make a different decision, and see how that turns out. We would rather be unhappy, living in our shit, making the same decisions with the same kind of people over and over again, than stepping up, taking ownership, and making different decisions and seeing the results. At the end of the day, every day, all day, we are making choices, whether we think we are or not, by choosing to say something or not, to speak up or not, to ask for something or not only by what we actively do, but also by what we don't do, by what we allow, by what we'll tolerate. That is also a decision. Now, this next part is interesting because it ties into the growth mindset, which is my favorite mindset, which is what I teach in positive psychology and what I will be teaching in Thrive. But if we learn from the times that things didn't work out, then we have an opportunity for growth, for change, for doing something different, which means the choice wasn't wrong. There are consequences for all of our actions and decisions. And I actually use the word results because the word consequences is not a word that people like. So let me say that again. There are results for all of our actions and decisions. And if we can learn from our mistakes and missteps, then we have gained in the long run. And that's part of the thing that I see a lot of people my age struggling with is that if we make what we view as a mistake, then it's a failure and we just suck. We just did it wrong. Instead of what actually went on here? What can I do better? What can I do different? Is this actually something I'm interested in? Who here has went after something in life and then found out you did not want that thing at all? Or who here has made maybe a rash decision and it turned out to be great? There's a lot of unknowns, and there are times where we move to places for the job maybe we've been trying to get for 5, 10 years and we hate it. These are all real things that happen. But to me, the difference between people who are thriving in life versus surviving in life are the people who can step back, learn from their mistakes, and not even their mistakes, but just what didn't work or what was a disappointment, maybe, so they can do better in the future. And a fixed mindset believes that what is what is, and it will never change. The growth mindset understands I can keep learning, I can keep choosing differently, and hence I can keep creating a different and better future for myself. It's such a simple shift, but it is a humongous shift. But listen, none of us are fucking doing it, or most of us aren't. I am. My people are. These are all the things that are the core foundational work to all of my work. and particularly Thrive coming up. We are shifting the way that you think over 9 months. We are shifting your actions and behaviors over 9 months. That's why we're doing it for so long. She finishes by saying, when we allow fear to interfere with our decisions, we tend to choose to do nothing, which is still a decision. This keeps us from our dreams. It keeps us from our hopes. Because if we're only concerned about maintaining, we can never move forward. And that's a lot of what numbing is. We're just trying not to go bad. We're just trying to stay in some level of mildly okay rather than better. Because we're so scared that we're not going to get better, or we're so scared of what we're going to see if we look at ourselves. I promise you, here's what I promise you. I promise you that your shit that you haven't healed is still in the driver's seat, driving your car, train, whatever transportation we want to put in there, driving your life, whether you acknowledge it or not, because 95% of our beliefs are created by the age of 7. 95% of our beliefs that are still running around in your brain are created by the age of 7. And we are making decisions every fucking day from that space. And we don't even question it. We just think it's what life is. And I will tell you, it is not. God, I love the ahas. Right now, I'm not coaching a ton. That's part of the reason why I'm like, hey, let's do sessions. I miss coaching. I actually miss talking to people. I've been doing a lot of creating, a lot of research, a lot of everything else. When I create programs, there's a lot that goes into it, usually months and months and months of work. But I miss talking to people because I miss those moments where they're like, oh, I I didn't see it like that. I didn't know it was that. I can now look at it and do differently or better. That's where the good shit is, my friends. This concept of making decisions out of love versus fear. It's a it's a tough concept. It really is, because the average person is not slowing their lives down enough to really ask themselves that question and really can have enough outside perspective to maybe answer it correctly. That's okay. That's why you work with somebody. This is a foundation of Thrive. We will talk about this for 9 months. We will talk about this all the time until you start realizing where your decisions are coming from and doing better, which you can't do by yourself and you can't do overnight. It has to be intentional activities that can disrupt our normal lives so that we can do better. I think that's fucking exciting because, man, am I looking around at a lot of miserable people right now. I think it's exciting that there are new psychologies and science and skills and mindsets that we can slowly but aptly apply to do life better. I don't know how everybody's doing this right now, guys. I am between perimenopause, the fucking election, people in general. I, on some days, feel like I am barely making it. And I have the tools and mindsets that I can go to during tough times. Danny was home the other day and he got stuck for 2.5 hours trying to cancel a service on on Charter Spectrum, which is our internet and TV and whatever provider. They somehow had added TV as a service. We never actually ordered it. And he had to wait for 2.5 hours and he actually never got to speak to somebody. So by the time he was off that phone, both of us were just in the shittiest mood ever. We were both so frustrated. And I looked at him and I'm like, we got to shake this off. We got to stop today where it's at. We need to reset so that we can spend and enjoy the rest of the day together. And we did. And he knows how to do this because he now has been married to me. or with me for 10 years. 10 years, guys. 10 years. Holy fuck. But we were able to salvage that day. That day just didn't go to the shit. Because one of the greatest things that Rob said a couple of weeks ago that was a great reminder to me is that time is our most precious and limited resource. And we sure spend a lot of time hurt, lonely, angry, upset, pissed off, bitter, frustrated, disappointed, just living in fear. Fear from the past, fear of the future. Worrying is fear. Overthinking is fear. We are trying to think so hard, so long on a situation that whatever happens, we can feel in control. And I don't care who you are, that's not a real thing. I wish it was for all of us. It's not. But who would you be if you spent 9 months of your life working on some of these simple ideas? Am I making decisions out of love or fear? And then better yet, who would you be if the majority of your decisions were from love? Love for yourself, love for others, love for our world, love for our planet, love for all of it. Who would you be if you were not making decisions from a scarcity space? Who would you be if you were not making decisions from a fear of failure place? Fear of trying new things and you not being great at it right away? Who would you be if fear wasn't leading your existence? Part of the reason that you do programs like this is to be able to learn it, but also to do it with other people, have that accountability, have somebody holding up the mirror because we can't see shit that we can't see. Our blind spots are there. Who would you be if you had somebody sweary but adorable in your ear for 9 months saying very gently, you know what? I think that's out of fear. You know how I mentioned what that's actually coming from self-worth? When we break that down, it's fear. Because low self-worth and self-esteem are just the fear that you are unlovable and don't belong. It's fucking crazy, man. It's fucking crazy how everything ties to this. I hope this was good, guys. I hope you learned a lot today. I love this idea. And when I realized that I haven't talked about this in a really, really long time on this podcast, and I just saw the state of the world this week, I was like, we need to talk about love versus fear. We need to understand that all of these people who we see are being assholes are just scared. Now, that doesn't mean you have to like them. That doesn't mean you have to talk to them. That doesn't mean they have to be in your life or get to be in your life. But we can certainly understand that their shit is just fear. All right, guys, that's it for today. If you are not the age or not ready for Thrive, come grab a couple sessions with me. We can talk this out. If you want to talk about this on a one-on-one session and just say, Kira, I think I'm making a lot more decisions from fear than I think. Will you talk it through with me? Yep. If you want to bring a situation that you need a script for, a tough conversation, if you just need some outside feedback because you're so far into it, you can't see through the trees, I got you. All right, guys, that's it for today. If you're ready in 2025, who thinks that seems weird? Wow. In 2025, if you're ready to change your life, change it with me. Let's do this. Let's fucking do this. I'm so excited. There is now a 10-part payment plan. Figure it out. Come talk to me. We're going to jump on a call. And by the way, if it's not a good match, if I'm like, you know what? This isn't what you need right now, I will tell you. I'm that person. If you liked this, please subscribe. I don't always put things out weekly. Sometimes I put things out 3 times a week. Sometimes I'll have a week and a half to 2 weeks in between. So subscribe so you know exactly when things go live. Finally, if you really love it, please leave a review. Whether it's just some stars on Apple or Spotify, or really writing down what you are learning and loving about this podcast. I read every single one. They fucking make my day. You are the wind beneath my wings. And it helps get it out there. Because honestly, as much as I can say this, for as much feedback I get about this podcast, which is a lot, and most of it all very positive, except for the people who don't like my swearing and don't fucking care. Even if you never share this with another person, by you writing an anonymous review, that lets other people know this might be something that they want to check out. All right, guys. I'll see you soon. No more surviving. Let's thrive.